warm welcome to Mind Your Business. I'm Jennifer Anderson, host of the show. I'm also the executive director of the Georgina Chamber of Commerce. Well, today we're talking about events that take place in this community, and certainly it is important for businesses and organizations. There are events that are held throughout the year, but because of the pandemic, things have changed. The industry has changed. Organizations and businesses have had to postpone and cancel events. Revenue is lost. We have three people joining me today who are very involved in community events. I'd like to introduce them for you now. You know Amanda Stewart. She is right along with me, my sidekick at the Georgina Chamber of Commerce. She is also the owner of I Do Weddings. Hi, Amanda.
Hello, Jen.
Thank you for being here with me today. We also have Gary Semeniuk. He is an event organizer with Georgina the One's Vehicle event. Gary, that's just your first hat. There are so many hats that you wear, but because we're talking about events, that's what I'm going to introduce you as today. Thanks for joining us here.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's good to be here and happy to assist any way we can and letting people know what's happening in the community.
Perfect. And of course, no stranger to events in this community is Forrest Jones. He is the event organizer of Countryfest, as well as many different concerts that are happening not only in Georgina, but right across the province. Thank you for joining us, Forrest.
Thanks for having me, Jen. Appreciate it. Look forward to the talk.
Well, and that's what we're going to do. So over the next half hour, we have a lot of information that we want to get to, but certainly people in the community know that events have been canceled because, well, they have, right? You're not allowed necessarily to be in certain locations. Buildings have closed. Joining in groups more than 5 is not allowed right now. And again, we're taping on May 11th, so that may change hopefully it will change in the coming weeks and months. But we certainly, with our guests today, we have a very diverse group of individuals who are running different types of events. Amanda, you know, I know for a lot of folks, they have been anxiously awaiting their wedding day. They've been planning for months and years, and this has really thrown a wrench into the wedding industry.
Absolutely. So the wedding industry has essentially been devastated with COVID-19, unfortunately. There are no weddings that are currently taking place, not only in Georgina, but for any Georgina residents, not only because of, you know, the gathering and the number of people that are allowed to gather, but the fact that wedding licenses are not being issued at all either. So for any Georgina resident that's looking to be married, unfortunately, this is just not the time for them. So postponements are definitely on the agenda, unfortunately for them. Some are canceling altogether, unfortunately. Most, thankfully, are just looking to postpone. The difficulty, though, is postponing to when? You know, are you postponing a month? Are you postponing 3 months? Are you postponing a year? You know, unfortunately, no one really has the answers at this point. So it's become very individual to the couple.
And I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about your business and what you do. I Do Weddings has been around, you're celebrating 10 years. And you are a wedding coordinator. So all different gamuts, but this is something that you haven't seen, I'm assuming, in the 10 years that you've been in business. You've seen a lot.
Yeah.
But now you've seen it all.
Well, before this, I had seen 1 cancellation and 1 postponement. Today, here, May 11th, I have witnessed 19 postponements just in 2020 alone. 2020 was actually supposed to be the biggest wedding year for I Do Weddings on record, not just because it is my 10th year, but because, you know, brides and grooms all across the world have been waiting for 2020. You know, it's just got a nice little ring to it. So I have been working with couples for, you know, over a year, some from 2018, 2017, looking to get married in, you know, the biggest, greatest year there is. And unfortunately, that's just not the case any longer.
Right. So disappointing. Forrest, what about you? You have events that you have been planning. This is how do I say this? This isn't your day job, but it really is a full-time overtime job for you because of the number of hours that you put into planning events in this community.
Yeah, for sure. First and foremost is Countryfest, which is an annual event in July, or at least it's supposed to be. But unfortunately, we've had to postpone that this year, and I think that's going to be the new reality. And you're right. When do we postpone till? So for Countryfest, we've moved it to October, and we're hoping for the best. And we've had to make a lot of changes as a result of that, moving it from one location to another. But speaking of events, for the rest of 2020, I have 44 events that I either have to move to other dates, move to other years. So it's a strategic nightmare, but yeah, and it is a part-time business. In fact, the interesting part as well is I was just in the throes back in January, February of hiring someone to come in to be a full-time person with me, so that way I could, alleviate some of the pressures of 44 events in a year. But just this virus has impacted everybody in every which way, and I'm not sure what's going to happen as a result, and until things start to, improve. The social distancing words we've never heard before are now the new norm.
Right. Certainly the new norm for you, Gary, as well. I know, and I mentioned the One's vehicle event has become so popular at the Ice Palace. There is a delay in the 2020 year now. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the car show right now, we got word 2 weeks ago, is delayed until at least June 30th. And that's just a tentative. It could extend farther. We don't know. We are usually, well, not usually, we are always involved in Canada Day as well. And that's gone to a virtual event this year. So at the earliest, we're looking like we're going to fire up on July 4th. And that's still a tentative. And that also goes for our other events that we have coming through the fall months, including even our drop-ins that we're doing with Alpida in town. We had to cancel yesterday's event, Mother's Day. So far we've moved it to be a merged event on Father's Day, June 21st, but we'll see what happens with that. We still don't know if we'll be able to do it.
Right. You have a very successful pie giveaway as well, although that is Thanksgiving weekend, so we can keep fingers crossed for that event. No decisions are being made yet.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's on. We have the permits out. Everything's ready to go. I mean, we're lucky that our events really don't change, right? They're all just date related and away they go. They're pretty predictable. Our big problem we have right now, like all of us, is that our events are all tangible. And, being in a tangible world, you can't not have an event. We can't do them virtually. The only thing we're able to do is our real estate business virtually. And even that's fundamentally a challenge we're working our way through.
Well, and I was going to mention, because you and Gina are very popular faces in the real estate industry in our community, and you have had to adapt that work to really allow to continue what you are doing in terms of buying and selling.
Yeah, we had to, overnight pivot. Some realtors have basically just decided to take time off, do whatever they're going to do, family, replan. In our case, we decided to just shift quickly from making real estate sales calls, because we do the majority of what we do online, to care calls, and then involving different businesses in town through things that we're doing. So quietly, we've been working through that. We do have a really strict sanitary protocol disclosure in place with regards to buyers, sellers, and ourselves, and then sanitary policies that we follow. But majority of, I suppose the one good thing to come out of COVID, maybe for all of us in different ways in our business, for us, is the ability to now be on virtually. We're going to stay virtual after this is all over with, and just make that a component of our business. We always had it, but society wasn't really there. It wasn't the way that real estate functioned. And our events, that will not change. The only thing we can do is uphold them for now.
We've certainly caught up to the virtual. I
Right.
think all of us have figured it out pretty quick in the last 8 weeks, how to pivot. That was the word you used, and I love that, Forrest, because, for you, Forrest, you mentioned 44 events and having to change dates for 44 events. But before that, you were planning 44 events. So you've already gone through this, and the magnitude of, I've heard this was a bigger year than ever before for your events. You had more events than you've ever had before.
Yeah, this is definitely by far the year that was going to be, 2020 was going to be a big year. And to give some perspective from a financial dollar point of view, for people to have some reality to this, every show has a value somewhere between $5,000 and $12,000 cost to it. So you add that times 44 events, and then you add a big event like Countryfest, which is about a $30,000 event. You're talking a lot of deposits. You're talking a lot of contracts, not only with the theaters, but also with the artists, with providers of lights and sound. I mean, it's a lot of work, but the thing is I really do enjoy it. The big part that I take away from it as well is when it is a Georgina-based event, my goal is to always include a charitable component. It's what I live for, to be very honest with you, when I'm doing things in Georgina. And even some of the other areas. I mean, I've got an event in Richmond Hill where we're involving the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and it's just because of the design of the event, and it just worked well. And so once you start including charities, things become a little more tolerable. You don't mind rewriting the contracts and going back to the drawing board, so to speak. But it's also the advertising. There's a lot of money that's put into advertising, and it's a big event, not only Countryfest, but all the other events. But looking forward to making changes. And in fact, we're already planning for events in 2021 to come to Georgina in this area that are new, that have never been done before. So we're putting the pedal on the metal, and we're going to keep going for it.
There is money, though, that has been lost and can't be recouped because of some of those changes, I'm assuming?
Anything that we've done so far, if I can defer it to a new date, then it's okay. But I mean, any event that was happening, for example, March, April, and May, and even into June, there's about 10 events, 12 events right there that were advertised. And, so there's a fair bit of lost revenue there, unfortunately. And there are unfortunately also no government programs to subsidize that, but it's just part of the business. We have to be able to, roll with the punches, and, hope we come out better on the other side.
Right. Amanda, you certainly know events that are in the tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. And there is a lost revenue for a lot of weddings that have been postponed, correct?
Yeah, it's very individual in the wedding industry because of the number of moving parts and vendors and the just uncertainty. Every single vendor is uncertain as to what the stipulations are, what it's going to look like when we come out on the other side, what the timeline is going to look like. And then we have venues specifically that also kind of, where these weddings are taking place. They're kind of the be all and end all, or, the first stop. So when they are unsure of when they can open, and therefore, when you're postponing and trying to reschedule, it just becomes a logistical nightmare somewhat at the beginning. Luckily, we've all, navigated things now. A lot of us are 7-8 weeks in. So, the pressure has really come down. The stress has really come down. But at the beginning, no one really knew. So I think together as a wedding industry, a lot of us as professionals came together and decided, bounced ideas off of each other. What are you doing? How are you dealing with it? Are you giving a year? Are you giving, 2 years time frame? What are you doing with deposits? It was there's just so much uncertainty. No one really knew how to navigate the questions and what the answers actually were. So at the end of the day, I think on a whole, most vendors are looking to extend the deposits at least 12 months. You'll see for 2021, weddings on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays are going to become a lot more popular just because, with that 12-month extension without losing the deposit, people need to get married at some time. So different days are going to become the new norm in 2021. Whether or not that continues into 2022, who knows? But I think for the most part, To answer your question quickly is no, there isn't that much money that's actually been lost. It's been postponed, which is nice. But there are some people that are just finding themselves stuck, unfortunately, because of other extenuating circumstances. So there are a few that have lost, but for the most part, thankfully, the wedding industry has really kind of come together and decided that, it's just not fair to lose these deposits and this money, unfortunately. So that's the one positive from out of it. But yeah, we just don't know ultimately at the end of the day.
Right. Financial loss for your events, Gary, is it more about, and I know that there is a philanthropic component to what you are doing and receiving funds for charities. Is that the financial loss that you're forecasting because you are opening the event later?
Yeah, I mean, for us, our events, other than the new ones we're adding this year tentatively, we need to be able to do them, but they are on the books. We're adding 2 new events. The majority of our costs are all in the setup, right? So our car show, almost everything we do relates to those costs. And the fortunate thing that we have, and I'll get to like where it does lead to a loss currently, the only thing that 2 people that are going to lose are the charities in the town, because our events are almost all on town properties. We take out permits and we have to pay for those events. So the car show being the biggest, we're going to lose potentially half the season. So they're going to lose half that revenue. And for us, it's not really damaging ourselves. It's less cost that Gina and I have to put in because we do subsidize the majority of the cost of all of our events. So for us, it's actually not a bad thing other than our business is affected this year. So it kind of balances itself out. I think the biggest sufferers are our charity components because we do deal with Jericho, we deal with Hospice Georgina, and we also deal with and I just lost my train of thought, the food pantry. So, between those 3 this year, if we can still pull off our fall event with the pie giveaway, everything should be good with regards to the food pantry, but definitely the majority of our other events are going to have some sort of scale back. So we're looking at if we can pull off our other events, then we may just take those components and drop them into those other events so that Jericho and Hospice can be supported. And that's kind of where we'll end up.
So you adding 2 additional events, there's a saying that I love, and if you want something done, ask a busy person. And I've asked 3 of the busiest people that I know to be a part of the show because you're very involved in the community. And I love that, each of you, as you're talking about the loss of what's happening during this pandemic, you're also talking about the future. You're talking about adding new events this year. You're talking about adding new ones next year. So you really are in kind of that stage of, we get it. This today sucks, but we're moving on. Amanda, is that true?
Absolutely. It's actually a little crazy that, when it's in your blood, you're either a planner or you're not, is what I say. I've always said it. I've always been a planner. I'm planning things that I would have never even had on my radar ever before. And, you just have to keep moving forward, especially in in an industry such as weddings. It's the happiest time of some people's lives. And so, when you don't have that, there is definitely a void that you need to fill. So at this point, let's think of another way of making people happy. And, especially outside of weddings, if I'm wearing the chamber hat, we have tons of events a month, tons. And, at this point, we aren't necessarily getting together and seeing people, but we're still doing things every week, if not every other day. And it's just the way you have to do it at this point. Both of you have hit the nail on the head with pivot. That seems to be the word. If 2020 had a word, pivot is definitely it. And, I think on a whole, we're doing a great job of doing just that. Let's get rid of the bad and start looking forward to the new, to the, what have we learned, what's come out of this, and essentially, how can we keep getting people together in a new way?
Right. You ended that so positively that I don't want to bring up the negative of the chamber having to cancel the home show this year, but as a not-for-profit organization, that is a huge revenue generator for our organization. And we took a huge financial loss because of having to cancel it. I know each of you are very philanthropic in our community, actively involved with different organizations, and you're all seeing that impact of when they are canceling events, there's revenue lost. Gary, I know you are on the board with Jericho Youth Services, and you have certainly seen dances canceled and bingos canceled and all different events within that organization.
Yeah, I mean, Jericho, they're in the same sort of boat as everybody else, that everything they do is tangible. So currently, with not being able to, have after class or before and after class support and breakfasts and things and the dances, it's affecting what they're doing. So, currently there's a repositioning looking to do it virtually, much like this, where they're moving into the Zoom environment and carrying on until we can get to a point that we can do this tangibly again. So, there's a lot of logistics, just like we're doing here today. We have studio, this, that, and everything else involved in multiple people. So especially when it's a not-for-profit and board run, it takes a little longer to get things moved through its dispositions of need. And they're doing their best, It's just unfortunate that we're all going through what we're going through. But I think the positive thing in all of this is maybe we were all too casual in life, right? So now I think you're going to see some new disciplines coming out of this, and potentially maybe a more relaxed society, but we're certainly going to have a new set of chores that we're going to have to do, I think, for a long time. Yeah.
Forrest, we were talking before we began this show about the very successful bottle drive that was held by Roots. I know you, and you mentioned earlier on the show that you are actively involved, each of your events is actively involved with not-for-profit organizations. That was really what Amanda said, a pivot to be able to provide some revenue for an organization who is currently in need.
Yeah, Roots has taken a bit of a hit over the last little bit, of course, just like every charity has, in fact. So one of the ideas came through our pipeline, in fact, through our executive director, to do a bottle drive. So it was also about timing and trying to get it together, and we wanted to do it fairly quickly. So within literally 2 weeks of the idea to fruition, we put together a massive plan. We had, I don't even know how many cars come through, but thousands of bottles, thousands of cans, and many man hours. We had 5 volunteers. We stuck to the COVID-19 rules, and just over $2,000 raised technically in one day. So kudos to the town of Georgina residents for coming out. And, I just think it shows what the community is about. It's nice to see that. But we have to do different things in order to get the old results, unfortunately. If we don't, we'll be left behind. And even Countryfest, for example, and one of the things that I think about what people could do is, the reality is, we have an opportunity where with Countryfest, people do actually get a ticket to the event, but you also get a voucher or a ballot to win a trip for 2 to Nashville. So what people also need to realize is $5 of every ticket is actually going back to the charities. Roots, Shades of Hope, and Jericho. I'm not sure what more we can do, to be honest with you. For $25, you get a ticket to an event, you get a ballot for a draw for a trip for 2. Because that's part of what we all, what we need to think about, what we need to try to do to overcome the obstacles of people buying late. And one thing I suggest to our town is, especially if it's secure, if you can buy a secure ticket, and if the event doesn't happen, you get your money back or what have you, it sure would help organizers. For example, Countryfest, for example. Otherwise, the sad reality eventually will be that we won't be able to have those events in the future. And again, I don't want to put a negative spin on it, but if we get the support, and it doesn't have to be huge support, we just have to see enough to say, okay, we want to have this event here, and we're going to support it, and the charities mostly will be the beneficiaries.
Well, and I see nods from every other event organizer on the screen who is saying, absolutely, you're right. And we only have a couple minutes left, but it is that idea. You know, we see a community who fully supports Georgina. We are very proud of this community, but we also see a community who takes their time in getting tickets or last minute or and maybe doesn't realize the impact. So if you could make that ask to folks in this community, what would it be? What kind of support would you be looking for? Gary, I'll start with you.
Well, you know, I mean, in our case, we're in real estate, we're essential service, so keep supporting your realtors. You know, we're not the typical employed type people that get paid for the production we do. We get paid when the deal is closed. So there's no lifeline between now and then. So if there's any moving action happening out there, that would be, you know, stay on it, stay in it, because there's predictability in the now. That's one thing we don't know about what's going to happen with regards to our economy when this all starts up. So people buying and selling, you should just stay in the game, because right now it's predictable. I think the other side of it is, just like we're doing in our business and our events and our social media shares, is there's a lot of businesses in town, as we all know, closed, right? And that is hugely expensive because the taxi cab meter doesn't stop running, right? It just holds its hand out and wants its money. So a lot of these businesses require support. So I would encourage anybody, and I know we're all financially affected, but if you have the ability and you know you use these businesses, reach out to them and see if you can buy gift certificates. Anything that helps them pay the rent even will certainly help keep those businesses open for when we come out of this.
Perfect. And a few seconds, Amanda, any last words?
Yeah, absolutely. My last words would be to stay local, Georgina, buy local, support local, whether it's an event, whether it's a business, whether it's a neighbor, you know, stay here now more than ever. You know, everybody needs that little bit of support. So if you've got some money or you've got some time, reach out. And if you don't know where to go or you don't know how to do it, reach out to the Georgina Chamber of Commerce. It's always a good spot to start.
I love that. That's the perfect way to end this show. Thank you to each of you for being here and being a part of Mind Your Business today. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you watching at home. The events in our community are vital to make this community a success. So thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Mind Your Business.